Welcome to Control+M Presents, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As a reminder to all attendees, we're recording this session, so you're all on mute. So when question time comes around at the end of Justyna's presentation, you'll need to remember to unmute. Today, our Justyna Walker is going to be continuing her series on tooling in Plex. She did a basic tooling session a few years back and has finally found time to get to the more advanced concepts in tooling. If you're interested in seeing her session, you can go to our YouTube channel and look for the playlist called Tooling, and I'll also put the direct link into the chat. Sorry. We deal with a lot of companies who need to manage tooling, and candidly, there's a lot of choices in how to do it. We have some customers who build tools using the tool manufacturing module, some who make tools as though they were parts and convert them into tools. This they do for a number of reasons, sometimes due to shared resources like raw materials or work centers, or the same shipping department sending out tools for a subcontract as sends out parts for subcontract, or even for actual costing. Although Justyna is not going to be going into tool manufacturing today, it's important to note that those capabilities are available. We have some clients who use the simple version of tools, for example, calling a complete die set a tool because they put the die away complete and they manage it as one unit. Still others, some of whom I know are on this call, will use the tool detail method with serialized tooling. I sort of view tooling like rejections. There's 6 or 7 different ways to process rejections in Plex. There's lots of different ways to process tools, and you can mix and find out, which one is right for you. The key to setting up your tooling correctly is understanding the Plex capabilities and then aligning those with the requirements of your company. So Justyna joined us nearly 4 years ago, and she's been a powerhouse in our Canadian office, as well as helping out many of our US clients. Our clients love her attention to detail, her well-rounded knowledge in Plex, and willingness to jump in anytime we need anything. So enough from me, Justyna, please take it away.
Okay, thank you very much for the kind words there, Patty. Appreciate that. And hello, everyone. Welcome to my Control+M Presents Tools in Tool Sets. Patty may have mentioned that this session is, or actually I should say, Patty did mention that this session today is being recorded, and it is actually going to be added on our YouTube channel, hopefully by the end of this week. If you are joining us today, hopefully you did have a chance to watch my previous tooling session. That's where we went over the configuration requirements for tool assemblies, tool sets, and maintenance, as this session is building on that previous session. In today's session, we are taking everything we learned in the previous session and adding tool details to it to see how it all comes together. The intent is that by the end of today's session, you will know of 2 ways to do tooling and then can decide which one works best for your needs. Of course, if you hadn't had a chance to watch my previous session, not a worry, this session will be just as informative. On our agenda today, we are going to cover the basic setup of tools and tool inventories. We'll show how they link to the tool assemblies and tool sets. We will then jump into Plex to review how they all come together into one, how they are used in production, and we'll review maintenance for a tool set with the tools. Before we begin, I'd like to cover some basic terminology in hopes to better explain what each one of these mean. Tool assemblies define the relationship between tools and production. Assemblies are linked to parts and operations. The assembly's BOMs specify which tools or sets must be present to run production. Tool sets are the physical occurrence of a tool assembly. They are typically used when there is only a tool set or when tools are stored and moved as a group. Tool sets can be standalone records, meaning not containing any tools, if the tracking of components is not desired. Tool sets cannot be purchased or manufactured, but can be maintained via the tool maintenance feature. Tools are individual tools or components that are required to run production. Tool details can be purchased, manufactured, or reworked. Tools cannot, however, be maintained via the maintenance feature. Tool inventory is the physical occurrence of a tool detail. It can be serialized or non-serialized. For my session today, I will be using a toolbox with tools as my example instead of a die or a mold. The reason why I chose this route is because everyone can pretty much picture a toolbox with tools in it, but not everyone can imagine what a die with components actually looks like. Okay, so as I mentioned in my previous slide, tools are individual tools or components that are required to run productions. They can be purchased, manufactured, or reworked. However, they cannot be used in tool maintenance. In this slide, I show an example of a tool detail for my tool called hammer. This is the minimum setup requirement required for what we are covering today. So let's review this section by section here. So starting from the top left, this is what I call the general tool information section. This section is used to track general information about the tool, such as the tool number, the revision, the description, drawing. It is also here that you can specify the tool group and type. Those are primarily used for grouping similar tools. One of the main differences between group versus type is that you can add tool attributes by tool type. For those not familiar with tool attributes, provide just an extra layer of grouping, similar tools should you need that extra layer of grouping. Okay, next we go to the purchasing section. This section can be left blank. However, it is recommended if you choose to use TRP. Here we tell Plex who we buy the tool from, how much it costs, and what is the order increment when purchasing. Again, not a required section for what we are reviewing today, but I do like to mention it, especially if you would like to utilize TRP for the purchasing. By the way, for those not familiar with the term TRP, TRP stands for Tool Requirements Planning, which is similar to supply ordering, where it looks at your minimum inventory requirements and then makes recommendations based off that for purchasing or whether to purchase or manufacture. Lastly is the life section in the top right. So the serialized inventory field is what tells Plex if your tool inventory will be serialized or not. You notice how the checkbox is not available for edit, it's grayed out. That is because we already have inventory for this specific tool. If inventory exists, even if it's inactive, you will not be able to modify this field. So this field is only modifiable provided there is no inventory, and that is why to serialize or not is a decision that should be made before you start creating inventory for your tool. The default stock location, this is the location when new tools will go upon receipt, or if you are using the disposition action on the tool set, which we'll look at when we jump into Plex. Minimum quantity is the reorder point for this tool. It is recommended that this number is not less than the replenished quantity in the purchasing section, as TRP will recommend the purchase quantity instead of the minimum quantity. The replenished quantity. Again, similarly to the purchasing section, this field is not required for what we are reviewing today, but I did want to mention it as it does go with TRP as well. Lastly, standard tool life is the expected life of this tool. It is important to note that this is for information purposes only. Plex will keep track of the standard tool life. However, it is for your information and for you to manage, as Plex will allow you to run past this tool life. Okay, if you recall, I did mention that tool inventory is the physical occurrence of a tool detail, and it can be serialized or non-serialized. The difference between serialized and non-serialized tools is that serialized means that each physical occurrence of a tool will have a unique number associated with it that can be used to track activity or life, whereas non-serialized tools are simply just inventory quantities. In this image that I'm showing here, I show the difference between a serialized tool and a non-serialized tool. You can see that the serialized tool has unique serial numbers, and the quantity can only be one. As opposed to the non-serialized tool does not have a serial number, and the quantity can be whatever you'd like, whatever you physically have in-house. I guess best way to explain this is if we use this slide as an example where we move one of the pencils to a work center. Plex does not know which of the 15 pencils was actually moved. It knows that one was moved, but it doesn't know, but there's nothing uniquely separating that one from the rest of them. However, if we move one of the screwdrivers to a work center, Plex knows exactly which one was used by the unique serial number. Okay, tool assemblies. They're their theory, they're non-physical. Some people like to refer to them as a process routing. They define the relationship between the tools and production. They're linked to parts and operations. Their BOM specifies which tools must be present. So as an example from the image on this slide, you can see that I have a tool assembly called toolbox. This toolbox is required every time I run production for a part number called JW stamping at the stamp operation. It also shows that this tool assembly consists of one hammer, two pencils, which happen to be optional, one screwdriver, and one tape measure. I also show that I have 3 physical tool sets for this tool assembly. Lastly, tool sets. They are the physical occurrence of the tool assembly. Here you see that I have 3 physical tool sets for the toolbox tool assembly. These are uniquely identified by the set number, which is like a serial number for the tool set. This way, Plex knows exactly which tool set was used for production for accurate tracking.
Sorry, in tool assembly, could you have serialized tools in that tool assembly, or do you need to have it as a tool set to be serialized, or is that independent as well? Sorry.
You could, but you're not. So tool assembly doesn't actually go, it doesn't load to a control panel. If that makes sense, right? So can you? Yes. But like what we're reviewing today is so then we can track for tool maintenance with the tool set and then the tools. Okay, sorry. So back to the session. Now that we've kind of reviewed the setup, I'll jump into Plex to review how this all comes together. So we'll load the tools into a tool set in preparation for production. We'll then jump over to the control panel and record some production. We'll review the PM on this tool set with the tools now in it. And lastly, we'll review how to unload these tools from a tool set and potentially disposition if needed. So I'll just go ahead and jump into Plex now. Okay, so we'll start off on the tool set screen. So this is essentially in preparation for production. You'll need to build your tool set. By build, I mean you're going to take those tools and you're going to load them into the tool set. By doing this, then your tool set will become available for production at the control panel. So there are 2 ways you can load your tools here. You can choose to load your tools using the tool serial number scanning field right here, or you may select from the picker. Right, so here's my inventory of 3. I've got 3 hammers. Here's my 3 unique serial numbers. Either way works, and it's up to you which method works best. One of the most common questions we do get asked is, especially when with tools and like tool details, how do you get that serial number so then you can scan it onto this tool? Yes, you can laser it in, but the most common way is actually getting a label, and either you attach it, you stick it to the tool, or you attach it with like a clip, or something like that. It really just depends on how big that tool is. The lasering is great, but it's not a realistic way sometimes. Just depends on the size of the tool and your process. Okay, so here I will go ahead because we're going to run some production for this tool set. So I'm going to go ahead and load some tools. So I'd like to show you. So first, I do have a serial number for my hammer. So basically, here we go. This is my serial number, so I'm scanning it. Okay, and it's turned green because my requirement was only one for the hammer, and I loaded. Alternatively, for my screwdriver, I'm going to go ahead and click on this guy. My tape measure, I'm going to click, update, and those two are now green. I only required one, required was one, I loaded it. Now I could stop here because my pencil is optional, right? It's not a requirement, it is optional. So in theory, my tool set is nice and green now, and it is ready for production. However, my pencil is, if you recall from a couple slides ago, it is a non-serialized tool. So I just want to show you what that will look like. So I've got 15 pencils. We can't scan it because remember, there's no serial to scan. Therefore, my only choice is to pick it. And as you can see, it picked the 15, right? And it loaded it. However, I'm going to go ahead and update it. Plex will do the math for me, and it knows that I need a 2, so it split the 2 off. If we took that 15 and it recognized 2 of them are now in the toolbox and the 13 stayed back in the tool room. And now this also turned green because it is now available for production. I'll go ahead and go to the control panel. In the control panel, not much really in this example where we're doing tools and tool sets. Not much is changing from my previous session in the sense of I'm going to go into production. I'm going to go ahead and load my toolbox. So now that goes green. And I'll go ahead and record some production. I'm just going to record some production. I do need to record production because I want to show you the maintenance part of it. Okay, so we're done. I know, really super quick production. I'm going to go ahead and unload my tool. I will put it in tooling. Perfect. So now my tool is unloaded. My tool set is unloaded. So when I go to do tool set maintenance, the reason why we ran production for 1,000 is before today's session, I did set up a PM for the frequency of 1,000. So I'm going to search. It is due now, right? Because here's my frequency, my toolbox. Here's my frequency of 1,000. My actual is 1,000. So it did show up as due. Otherwise, it would not have shown up as due. I could still search for it just by undoing this flag. However, it is due because we did run the production. The main difference here that you will see compared to before is this tool inventory section down at the bottom. It does show you what the production was on each of the specific serial numbers. Right, notice how the pencil's not here. And it does show you the life. This life is a calculation based on what production was ran versus what the life expectancy was on the tool detail. Plex also allows you to reset one of these tools, the life of the tool. Why would somebody do that? I think a good example would be, you've got a die that has pins in it. When you're maintaining the die, you take all the components out, and a lot of the times these pins and fingers, they get ground down, they get polished, and they're, good as new. You could get probably a couple of lives out of it. So that would be a perfect example where you're actually going to go ahead and reset the life of that particular tool. Of course, you don't have to, you can just leave it. But in this case, this would be, you could, right? So the idea is you've got this tool set, you're maintaining it, these tools are in it, you're maintaining them at the same time, or perhaps you don't because the life is nowhere near what it should be, so you could ignore it. And then if you need to, you could reset it. So I'll just take the tape measure and I'll reset this life on just that one. So let me just complete my PM. Okay, do I want to reset? Yes, I do. And you'll see that everything's been reset. It's as good as new, basically what's happening here. So I'll go ahead and complete my PM. Okay, perfect. So now, if I go back to my tool set, what we've done up to this point is we prepared for production. We loaded the tools into our tool set. The tool set was ready for production. We then moved it over to the control panel. We ran some production. There was a PM that was due, that happened to be due on this particular tool set. Therefore, we completed a PM. Now, the next step here is we've got this tool set, this die, this mold, this toolbox.
Can I ask a question about the tool set? Is the PM tied to the set or the individual parts?
It is to the set. The PM is to the set. Yes.
So in the example of the 3 tools that you had in the tool set, only 2 of them really needed a PM. The second one with the 50% would be considered not required. Is that correct?
The PM is on the tool sets, the toolbox itself. So if you're looking at the individual tools within it, so tools don't have PMs. The tool set has a PM. So when you're doing the PM on the toolbox, you see all the tools that are within that toolbox, and then you make the the decision: do you need to actually polish that or clean it, grind it, or anything like that, or can you just let it be because, well, you're only at 25%, so you don't really need to do it. But the PM itself is on the toolbox, the entire thing. So like if you look at die maintenance, it's on the die, not the components within the die. But you do see the life at that time of the components, so you could also address if they need to be.
Oh, okay. I think I'm misunderstanding the life aspect of it. Okay.
The life aspect is, yeah, it's for the tool for you to track what life is at. It's for your information. It's not necessarily used in PMs, the life of the individual component. Okay, so now that we've got this tool set, we've done everything. It's back in die maintenance, and it can be, it can be broken down to be put away. Individual tools can be put back to their own little cubbies, their own shelves, or you could leave it as is. If there's no need to break it down, if these tools are going to stay this way and they're going to be used for production as this exact set again, the same serial numbers, the same toolbox, then just leave it as is. Nothing you really need to do. But should you want to break it up, meaning you take this toolbox and you want to unload the tools that are in it, you want to unload that hammer, you want to unload that screwdriver, those pencils, you want to put them back into their storage location because potentially somebody else with a different toolbox, or maybe somebody else will only just need a hammer or something like that. This is where what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to unload those tools. So here we can do it, and I'm going to show you 3 different methods of unloading these tools. So if you recall, this is the exact same way we built the tool. We can then come in here and unload it by literally clicking and unloading, right? The minute we click, see how that serial number is now gone, it's unloaded. Quite tedious if you've got like 60 tools within this tool set. That can get a little, got a bunch of clicking that you can do. However, you can. When you do it this way, what happens is that tool, so in this case, I will actually follow through with it, and I will unload the hammer this way. What's going to happen is this hammer is going to stay, it's going to be unloaded from this tool set, but it will stay in the location that the tool set is in. The idea is that then you're going to take that tool and you will physically move it to wherever you need to move it. You probably don't have default locations, so that's what you're just going to, you want to unload it, and then you're going to physically move it and put it in its cubby. So that's one way. Another way, which I will not demo because it will unload everything for me, is this breakdown button. Basically, what this breakdown button does is it unloads all the tools for you from this tool set. And with a single button, it's just going to go ahead and unload all the tools. It will keep the tooling. So this toolbox is in the location of tooling, right? It will keep all of them in the tooling location. So again, similarly from the previous step, you then put those individual tools in their individual location. And last is this position. This screen allows you to do two things. Well, technically three, but two things. One, it allows you to unload the tool from the tool set, and it will move it to the tool's default storage location. Notice how this is the tool room. It's going to move it to the tool room versus if I just go back here, remember the tool set is in tooling. Actually, we can see it here as well. My apologies. Right, so the current location is in tooling because that's where that toolbox tool set is. But if I do it this way, it's going to move it to the tool's default location, which is kind of nice, especially if you have designated locations for your individual tools. But you can also scrap from this screen, right? So here we've got two pencils, so I will put one back to storage. I will scrap one, and then I will move these guys also back to storage. I'll go ahead and apply. So now my tool set has been broken down. All the tools are unloaded. It's there. It's available for you to reload it next time you need it for production with brand new tools, new serial numbers. However, let's go into my tool inventory just to kind of show you what it did. So remember I did the hammer where I did it that manual way. I went into the detail and I just clicked that X. It left it in the location of tooling, which is where that toolbox currently is. Whereas everything else, right, it moved it. So I used serial number 7. It moved it back to the tool room. The tape measure, moved it back to the tool room. Notice how my life and everything is also back to 0 because that's the one that I reset the life. Whereas here, I moved it back to tool room. I still see your life calculation and actual production. And this is that pencil. So we had 15 pencils we started with, right? We loaded 2 into the tool set, which then my inventory, when I did that little pop-up, it did show that I had 13 in the tool room and 2 in the tool set. When I did the disposition, I scrapped one of them and I put one back to the tool room, and it did link it back to the 14. So this is where, the whole tracking of life and everything is really not available with a non-serialized because Plex doesn't really know, right? There's nothing unique about it. Okay.
Can you unscrap something or no?
You know what? I have never actually done it. Let's try it. Why not? We've got a couple seconds. Why not? Where's my pencil? Scrap. Yes, I did. There it is. It went back to 15. Excellent question, whoever asked that. Okay. Okay, so before I conclude my session and open up the floor to some questions, I did want to mention some changes that Plex is currently working on in UX. I did notice some names that are joining us today in our session that are actually kind enough to have been working with Plex on these changes, which is super cool. For Classic, there's no change, no impact for you. This is for UX. In a nutshell, this is actually one of their slides from Plex themselves. In a nutshell, they're adding the ability to load tools or tool sets at the control panel. They are bringing back the ability to use tooling with dynamic multi-outs. If you have multiple tool sets, they're bringing that visibility at the control panel. Right now, you only see the one tool set. They're bringing that visibility. So if you have multiple, like in my example, I had 3, you could see all 3, and then you can pick and choose which one you're loading at the control panel. They're adding some color coding in the maintenance fields, in the maintenance area, also at the control panel. And lastly, they're doing some cleanup with old settings that are no longer valid. So they're just doing some nicely needed cleanup and changes, improvements, if you will, in UX. I don't have the launch date for this yet. However, I know it's in the final testing phase, which is super cool, and it should be out hopefully very soon. Okay, this concludes my presentation. So I'll open up the floor for some questions.
Just want to remind everybody that you are on mute, so if you do have questions, you need to unmute before you ask your question. And I'm watching the chat channel, just in case anybody feels shy and doesn't want to ask a question out loud.
I got a question about tools and calibration, actually.
Tools and calibration?
Yeah, so we've got a situation here where we've got a bunch of tools that are being used in production that have some calibration dates on them. So we have to verify torque on these tools once a week, and then every 6 months we have to send them out to get calibrated. And so currently we're tracking them in the gauge control module, but that's something that we want to be able to move to the tool module so that they can use them out on the production floor.
Yeah.
Justyna, could you set up a tool maintenance that has once a week was it once a week calibration and then gets sent out once a 6 months, or?
Yeah, so it's just a verification that every week, but then every 6 months it actually has to get sent out to the factory to get calibrated.
Right. So we could, the thing is, we could probably do, well, not probably, we could do a maintenance, a PM, right? You can do because your PM can be on parts produced versus end days. However, that is on the tool set, not necessarily the tool detail. So unless you use them, which is okay as well, if you use the tools as a tool set and use like what I call the simple option, which was my first demo, which you don't use the details, you use your tools as tool sets. And then that way you can do your PM frequency on them.
And you would be able to do a 2-part PM like that?
You would be able to do a PM on it for sure, but you would have to load it for production as well in order to be able to do that PM.
Right.
So instead of a volume count, you can set it to a date.
Yeah, okay. You can. Yeah, your PMs can be done on both.
Does that make sense to you, Bao? If we did that with the Jiffy tools?
The only thing we'd need to do is have tool sets. So we'd have to define every tool set in every job. So yes, it is possible. And the lifetime of the part, can that be date dependent or no?
The lifetime of the part.
Or is that just a number field that requires X volume? Because we're in very low volume. We won't be making any thousands, but we'll be making one every time. And I guess we'll keep track of how many aircrafts we use that tool on. But can we change that life, or is there variability in instead of the quantity to a date on the specific parts? Because like Dave was thinking, if we move this to a different tool set, we'll lose that PM potentially. Because
Yeah, so your PM is going to be on the tool set, not on the tool. So if you are doing the PM on the tool set, your PM is then either based on your production numbers or a date, a frequency, like, every 30 days or whatever. If you want to then also load those tools to the tool set, you're tracking a life of that tool, and it can be used in different tool sets, and it's going to continue tracking the life of that tool as long as until you reset that life. But there is no necessarily a PM on that
I guess we
tool.
could kind of cheat with keeping a track of the tool life and have an external check to say once it reaches 5 aircrafts, we can send it out as a a secondary check as well. But it sounds like it's tied to the tool set. And if we do go down that route, we'd be keeping that tool to the tool set for until it becomes not decommissioned. Just understanding the limitations of the systems. I mean, it is what it is. We can use the tool set, Dave.
Yeah, we can talk about it offline. I just wanted to make sure it was possible.
For sure.
Great, Justyna, we got a couple questions in the chat I'd like to bring up. One of which I know is very near and dear to your heart from Brandon Rhodes. When they say tooling for dynamic multi-outs is not available, does that mean it will not work at all? We're looking at implementing the tooling module soon and use a ton of multi-outs, and they are in UX. So, Justyna, I know you know the answer to that one. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so right now, tooling is available for fixed multi-outs. It is not available for dynamic multi-outs. That is something that Plex is working on, as there have been plenty of cries about it, because it's just sounds silly. So that is something that they are working on improving. I do not have a launch date for that, unfortunately.
If you want, you can email Justyna or I, because we have access to the cases that our clients have put in asking for that, so we can keep you up on time frame on that if you want.
For sure.
Okay, next question from Eli. Are tool sets necessary? Is it possible to satisfy tool requirements by loading the individually serialized tools at the control panel?
You bet. You can totally do that. The only thing that you are missing out on here is your PMs and your maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Next question. I noticed on the last slide it said supporting loading tools and tool sets. My company just completed a classic to UX transition, and we have an open issue that tools are not able to be loaded from the control panel. Can you confirm loading of tools via control panel is a UX limitation? Are there any other significant differences in the tooling module from classic to UX? So Justyna, I think maybe what I'd like to do is have you tackle this, and then if Heidi is on, Heidi, I think you found an issue that you might want to let folks know. So let's have Justyna up and then Heidi.
Right. And I do hope, I know I saw Heidi on here before. And
She's on.
Yeah, the reason why we're throwing Heidi under the bus here is because she's she did come across, unfortunately, a lot of these headaches when transitioning from classic to UX with the limitations of tooling. They do use tooling. There's visibility to, I believe, notes fields at the control panel. Heidi, are you able to jump in on this one?
I mean, we should be able, just before we jump into Heidi yet though, the question is, can you confirm loading of tools via control panel is a UX limitation? We can still load tools in control panel, so it's not a limitation. If you're having struggles loading tools at control panel in UX, that should be something that should be easily fixed. Tooling does work, it just doesn't have all the same functionality as it used to.
Right. So currently with our setup that we have in Classic, we only have visibility to load tool sets. With the way they're changing it in UX, you will have visibility to both tool sets and tools in UX, and then I've requested the ability to then underneath, so on top, if you have tool sets where Justyna has her cursor way up on top of the screen, there would be tool sets, then there would be a listing of tools, and then there would be your maintenance. If you're only, our tooling people on the shop floor only load tool sets. The tools themselves would confuse them because they don't do anything with tools, just our tool room people do. So we would want some permission or some setting to make that non-visible to them. In some shops, they do have the visibility to just load individual tools. From all the people I've talked to, nobody that I know loads individual tools, but there would be that capability to have tool sets to load, as well as tools if you so choose. In our environment, we don't want that ever.
Yeah.
If that answers or complicates things more.
Thank you, Heidi.
See, with us, we are loading a tool assembly.
Well, you can't load a tool assembly. That's just a virtual existence of a tool set.
Yeah. So again, you're missing out. You're not getting your PMs at that point either, right?
Right. A tool assembly is basically your buildable tool set. It's basically your master of your tool. If that makes sense. So your tool assembly is just that, basically a part master for your tool, and the tool set is going to be the physical tool that you load in the machine.
Yeah, ours comes, I don't even see that option on ours. We actually have to build the set and then have an assembly, and the assembly is what the option comes up for loading.
Well, I think it might just be the wording, because when you're loading at the control panel, you are getting, let me see here, and you can, when I go to my tooling, it shows you both, right? It shows you because I put it.
Yeah, that's what we see
it's
right
not loaded. But it should have an assembly, and then it should have the set. It should have both.
Yeah, it tells you what sets are available.
Yeah, it'll show you the assembly required because that's the name of the assembly, but then you're loading one of the sets that is tied to that assembly, I think.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
That's why those pictures are so critical. Justyna, we got a couple of more questions here. How do tools work with the master kit list?
That's a classic term, I believe. If whomever asked that question, if you can confirm that, but I believe that's a classic term. And if I'm not mistaken,
that is in classic.
Yeah, and I believe it's been renamed to, that is the actual tool set now, correct? If I'm remembering that correctly. I think that's how that went. I'd have to look at the classic, because that's an old, and I do apologize for not giving you a solid answer right now, but I would have to look at that classic screen, because I believe that's an older verbiage, if you will.
So what we'll do for you guys is we'll post that answer to your question in the comments on the YouTube. Next question is from Jason, and I see you got your hand up. How does the tool set maintenance and tool inventory interface with the accounting ledger?
Oh, well, now that's just an evil question, Jason.
We're implementing the tool system right now, so I've spent a lot of time and effort in this whole thing. So I'm very well versed in the system, but that's the big hiccup that we're running into.
Now, when you say you want to, how does it impact the accounting? Are you referring to maintenance hours, labor hours on maintenance?
So the maintenance labor on the tool set maintenance record itself, we're having it go into a tool maintenance cost subtype And then also we want to have costed inventory because we build our tools in-house in the part system and move them over into the tool system, or would like to. And then have that total cost of the maintenance get back, put back onto the overhead and everything for the part, or the part cost eventually at the end of the year.
So Jason, let me dive in because Justyna is she is not all that familiar with SCAR and costing and all those fun things, but I am, and I would be more than happy to talk to you about that. As a matter of fact, you kind of gave me an idea. Maybe it's time for us to do a tooling and SCAR session, or even tooling and actual costing, because there is a lot that can happen there. So
yeah, and we've been kind of told that it doesn't interface at all with SCAR.
Well, then you and I should talk.
And with a couple of other things. Yeah, because that's a really big pain point right now. And unfortunately, our accounting representative is not on this call, obviously because this is tooling, but we would love to have a conversation if you have any sort of direction for us.
100%. Jason, can you do me a favor? Throw me an email. It's Patty, P-A-T-T-I, with the same at control.m.solutions. So,
yep, absolutely.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, well, we're running up with about 9 minutes left. So Justyna, we'll close the questions. If anyone has any more questions, throw them in the chat, and we will put the answers out when we post this to YouTube. So Justyna, if you want, next slide, please. Great job today. Thank you. I love all these great questions. I think interaction always makes these presentations better. And Heidi, thanks for letting us throw you on the spot here. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Our next session is on a concept that many of you may have at your company, but you might not know that Plex has a module to support it. It's called the in-transit shipment or deferred invoicing module. If you use the supplier portal, you're probably familiar with in-transit inbound inventory, but this is inventory on the customer side. So if you ship out customer goods FOB destination, meaning that you retain legal ownership of the goods until they reach the buyer's location, this may impact you. So if you ship goods on a Monday and they aren't received until Friday, you still own the inventory and have responsibility for it until it's been received by your customer. Obviously, given how Plex typically handles inventory at the time of shipment, that presents a bit of a challenge. So previous to this module that Ken's going to be talking about, these transactions were handled manually and not particularly efficiently. This module, which we and all of our clients who use it love, is rock solid, and it allows you to send out goods but not invoiced until they're received by the customer. And it holds the customer's shipped inventory in an in-transit status until receipt is recorded. And it really does work well with SCAR too. So join our Ken Keller in 3 weeks when he does this session. Like many of you, we're going to be taking Independence Day as a holiday, so we're pushed out 1 more week. And again, thanks for joining us. We know how valuable your time is, and we sure appreciate you spending an hour with us today. I'll be processing and uploading this video to our YouTube channel. Jill, thanks for sharing that link in the chat. Please check it out. There's almost 80 videos out there of training content available, and it's no cost, no obligation. If you like what you see, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe and spread the word. We want them to be available for everybody because we feel like the stronger the Plex community is, the stronger we'll all be. So once again, thanks, Justyna, and have a great day, everybody. Sure appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you.
Justyna, great job. Lots of good questions. So I think I'm going to put a session, I'll have Michael put out a session on saying that we're going to do tooling and costing. We could do tooling and actual tooling and standard, running through SCAR, running through JOCAR, tools as parts, which is becoming more and more popular. So maybe we'll tag team on that. It'll be kind of fun.
Give me an opportunity to learn some of that evil accounting side of things.
Tooling SCAR, yeah.
Well, just remember, Justyna, we have 2 CPAs on staff, so I'll never hold you responsible for it, but it's always good to know what it is. So
Right. At least as long as I know 1 + 1